Hawkeyes News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks, sponsored by University of Iowa Healthcare.
We are live with Eye on the Hawks. We apologize for anybody who's waiting in the queue as we got things going here. Some technical issues here on our end. Curtis Fader doesn't show up for one podcast, and just everything falls to pieces here on Eye on the Hawks.
Happy delayed birthday. It was his birthday yesterday, by the way. Didn't know if you knew that.
Missed it. Yeah. my B. I was in Des Moines covering state basketball. I've got an excuse. So happy belated birthday to Curtis, who's not here with us today. We have Owen Siebring and Mike Howell with just two-person Eye on the Hawks segment today. Curtis Fader, of course, over in Des Moines. He's traded place with me, and he's going to be covering the state basketball tournament today as we have Cedar Rapids Kennedy, Dubuque Senior, Cedar Falls, and then a couple of 1A teams playing tonight, Northland among them. So got some good high school basketball content coming your way if you watch Iowa's News Now later tonight at 6, 9, and 10. But in the meantime, we've got a Big Ten tournament to talk about for the Iowa women's basketball team. The double bye the Hawkeyes get, we already knew that was going to happen, but good positioning for them as they lock up the 2 seed in the tournament. Bumps Indiana to the 3 seed. Ohio State, of course, is the outright Big Ten champions. They get the 1 seed. So we do know that Iowa on Friday evening at 5:30, they will play the winner of Penn State and Wisconsin. Here's a look at the bracket that you can see, the lovely pinwheel with the Big Ten tournament colors. We've got to add a few more shades of blue and red and purple to that by this time next year once the Pac-12.
Oh, good call. I didn't think about that. So. There's so many little things with the Big Ten expansion. Everyone's talking about that iconic commercial that starts in the Rose Bowl and goes over. You know what I'm talking about? It goes across the map and has all the Big Ten schools. They have to redo that.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do an updated version because if I watch a football game that's Big Ten without that, I don't know what I'd do.
Honestly, yeah, it's a great commercial. Like you say, iconic commercial, and I think they can pull something off easily, doing something over on the West Coast, and then just jumping straight over to Nebraska. Anywho,
Big Ten tournament sets up as nice as it could be with for Iowa. I mean, unless Indiana dropped to the 4, but that wasn't going to happen. I think they finished a few games ahead of Michigan State. Yeah. You'd rather play Michigan State in those semis, but I mean, if you advance to Saturday and play in Indiana, and then advance to Sunday and play, that's 2 quality wins or a quality loss, on your resume before Selection Sunday. This Iowa team with a couple wins could get up to that 1 line, you'd think, with a couple of major top 10, top 15 wins.
I think, no question, they're at minimum a 2 seed right now. I don't think there's any way that they
the bracket reveal last week, they were the 5th overall team, so they'd have to do some dropping, which I doubt that happens, just the quality of teams, unless they lose to Wisconsin or Penn State. Even that isn't enough for me to drop them down to they were talking yesterday, Lisa, about the one you don't want to be, because she's like, someone asked her, does it matter if you're a 1 or a 2? Personally, I think it does, just a little bit, because you don't have to play another 1 seed. She's like, I don't want to be that 8th seed that has to play South Carolina in an potential Elite 8. Like, that's the one you don't want, and I think they're in a position where they wouldn't drop that far.
That was why that win on Sunday against Ohio State was so crucial for them, was because if they lost that game, and then if they were to lose to Penn State or Wisconsin, they really could drop to a 3 seed, I thought. But I think right now, after getting that quality win over the number 2 team in the country, I don't think there's anything that could happen that could drop them below a 2. And personally, I think that if let's just assume that Iowa and Ohio State make it to the championship game of the Big Ten tournament, and Iowa loses to Ohio State, there's still an outside chance in my mind that they could get a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So follow my logic here, if you will, as I pull up the NCAA women's rankings. So let's assume South Carolina wins the SEC tournament, Stanford wins the Pac-12 tournament, Ohio State wins the Big Ten tournament. Those are your 3 1 seeds. Okay. So the next team in the rankings is USC. So they would have lost to Stanford if they won the Pac-12 tournament. Okay, so USC isn't going up. Texas, assuming they don't win the Big 12 tournament, you would need that, so they would drop. UCLA, again, if Stanford's winning the Pac-12, they did not win the Pac-12, so they wouldn't go up. LSU, again, if USC won the, South Carolina won the SEC tournament, it wouldn't be LSU. UConn, who's ranked number 9 now, they would be the next team to possibly move up to a 1 seed, but they're ranked 9th. Could they get a 1 seed over an Iowa team that, let's say, they lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament championship? Who gets the 1 seed there?
Yeah.
UConn, who's 26-5, or Iowa, who would be 28-5 at that point?
For what it's worth, Charlie Cream of ESPN has the 4 number 1 seeds as South Carolina, obviously, Stanford, UCLA, and Ohio State. So it'd be that UCLA team, I think. I don't know what I don't have the rankings in front of me, but they have UCLA as that 1 and USC as a 2.
I don't see how that could even be. I mean,
the AP rankings don't always show the whole picture
to
the community.
It's true, but still, again, let's say Stanford wins the Pac-12 tournament. UCLA's record would be 25-6. Like, you're going to let a 6-loss team be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament? I don't know. I would have a really hard time seeing that. As good as UCLA is, they've got a great team, but I feel like if you've got 6 losses versus an Iowa team that has 4 or 5 losses, I don't know. That would be hard for me to fathom that happening, but I don't know. Regardless, I still think that even if they aren't the 1, there's a great option for Iowa to be the highest 2 seed. So they at least still would stay out of South Carolina's way on their tournament run too. So if they indeed get, let's say again, the top. I
think they'd be on the same side though. I think that 5th seed is on, like, South Carolina's on the top left. Mm-hmm. Right now, Iowa's on the bottom left. I think that's where the top 2 goes because they'd play the weakest 1.
So they would potentially play South Carolina in the Final Four again?
In the Final Four again.
Yeah. So theoretically, would they want the second best 2 seed?
Yeah, potentially.
Like, they would rather be number 6 than number 5?
I mean, at this point, it's like you're making to a Final Four, and you're going to have to beat a good team eventually.
Yeah.
I think at the end, it doesn't matter, right? But it would if if your bar is the national title game. But if you're going to try and win a natty, you're going to have to beat South Carolina anyway, which I don't know if that's happening.
Right.
Do you think it could happen, though? Like, what's the ceiling for this team? Okay, I think we all know what the ceiling is, but what do you think happens in the NCAA tournament, looking ahead?
Me? South Carolina's winning it.
Yeah.
Bar none. I'm sorry, Iowa, but you cannot beat this South Carolina.
I'm on the same page. It's tough. Now, if they stumble, like, obviously you want to be on their side because if they have an off night and, USC, it'd be USC, and that'd be funny. Or any of these other teams knock them off somehow if they're a bad matchup or whatever. If that happens, then that's why you want to be on the other side so you could get to the title game and potentially win it. But I'm on your side now. Yeah. I think this team's too talented.
Yeah, South Carolina is just so good. But here's what is fun about this year's NCAA tournament on the women's side, if you're a women's basketball fan. Again, South Carolina is undefeated. The number 2 team and the number 17 team are all between like 4 and 6 losses. It's like there's a lot of parity this year. In the past, if you were filling out a women's basketball bracket, you could basically just pencil in the 4 1 seeds into your Final Four, and you'd have a pretty good chance of being right. This year's women's basketball season has so much parity outside of South Carolina that you could really see anybody 1 to 4 seed making the Final Four. I mean, there's just so many talented teams out there that you could see anything happening along the way.
Yeah, agreed. I haven't watched much outside of Iowa on both men's and women's sides. There's so much to do during the day and the week. I've started to try and watch more games on both sides, and the gambling helps, but throwing some cash on a team. But yeah, no, like it's going to be an interesting watch.
Do you have a preference for the quarterfinals, whether they play Penn State or Wisconsin for Iowa?
I really don't. I think Wisconsin probably because
Iowa just owns Wisconsin in women's basketball.
They're Penn State. I don't think any of them. I mean, in this 40-minute game, anything can happen. But Wisconsin obviously is a 10 seed, and Penn State's a 7, and I think they beat them every one of those games that they played against those 2 teams. They played 3 of them. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure Iowa handled them in every one of them, so I'm not too concerned. But you never know what happens.
Yeah, some interesting challenges either way. Penn State's a very physical team, and so that would not be a 30-point blowout. I don't think it would, I think they could keep it close for the first half against Iowa. Wisconsin, they've got a great player in Sarah Williams, right? That's her name, their post player for Wisconsin.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, she's great. She's honestly outstanding, and she would be a tough matchup for them. That'd be Hannah Stolke and the rotating list of post players that would be tasked with her. So that would be a challenge for them. But
yeah, the whole defense, though. I mean, like I remember that Penn State game. They were playing so physical. Lisa even mentioned it yesterday. There were like something like 58 foul shots, you know, in the second half or something like that.
Yeah.
It was wild. And they play a physical brand, and that's the kind of basketball you kind of want to avoid. And I don't think the defense for Wisconsin can really guard the perimeter. They have that Sarah Williams who's good in the post, but I think, they won by 46 last time they played. So it's like you want to kind of see that.
Yeah. The last Penn State game, if we recall, was the game where we were really hammering it hard because Caitlyn was getting close-ish to the record. It was kind of like she went in, 66 points away from breaking Kelsey Plum's record, and so we were really hammering that game hard, and then that was the game that Hannah Stolke went off for her 47 points.
Yeah, the Penn State. I was thinking Wisconsin for some reason. Yeah, Penn State, yep.
Yeah, Penn State. So both good opponents that Iowa, I'm sure, wouldn't mind matching up against, but the semifinals when we assume, match up with Indiana. Sorry, bring up the bracket again. Who does Indiana play?
Sure. One second. Let me find that tweet. They would play the winner of Michigan, who is playing the winner of tonight's Rutgers-Minnesota game.
Okay. Michigan
could beat Indiana.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not no slouch.
That's a game that, Iowa didn't necessarily struggle with Michigan, but Michigan beat Ohio State earlier in the year, and Michigan kept it close in that game where Caitlyn Clark did break Kelsey Plum's record. Like, that was still a close game for a long time. So Michigan's a quality opponent. That could be a tough matchup for Indiana. Never know.
I think it's the most interesting about it is Iowa split with Ohio State and Indiana, home and away. All the home teams won, the away teams lost. But you potentially get 2 rematches on a neutral court. I do think the sold-out crowds in both of those arenas, or all 3, I should say, really played a factor in those games. You saw it because Iowa blew out Indiana on the return trip. Indiana blew out Iowa. And then it was, the Ohio State game was close on the road, but it was kind of in check, even though it was a 10-point win on Sunday. In a neutral court, even though I expect a lot of Iowa fans, like, what's that going to be like? So it will be interesting to see.
I'm glad that, just a plug for our viewers, Mike and I are going to be traveling up to Minneapolis to cover the Big Ten tournament starting on Friday. So we're going to have full coverage where we're going to be doing podcasts on the daily up there. So you can follow us for incredible content all along the way. But I am really curious to see what that atmosphere is like. First sellout Big Ten tournament in Big Ten women's tournament in conference history. I guess I don't know. Has men's tournament ever sold out?
I was wondering that, and I didn't have time to check, and I don't even know how to fact check that other than just emailing Big Ten.
Yeah. So first sellout for the women's tournament.
I doubt it though, because it's like, it might have, but the tournaments are so weird because
Power 5 tournaments just don't.
Maybe the Garden does for the Big East, but
yeah. Well,
you want to go for your team, and it's one session, right? And it's like kind of expensive for it's not considering you get like 2 games. But if you wanted to buy an all-season pass, it's actually a good deal. But if you're only going to go to your team's games, it's not worth it,
That was a stat for a long time. So, again, I'm a UNI grad, and we would always go to Arch Madness down in St. Louis for the MVC tournament. The MVC tournament had way better attendance numbers than most Power 5 conferences because most Power 5 fans and teams don't the stakes are not as high in the Big Ten or the ACC or the SEC tournament because most teams, if you're decent, you're going to get an at-large bid. For the MVC, it's like you have to win this tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. And so the fans are there just like rabidly waiting to see like, gosh, can my team pull this off? And so the Big Ten tournament's like, whatever. If you're an Iowa fan, they're getting into the tournament no matter what. So, not to say who cares, but it's the fervor is not quite there as much as it is at a mid-major conference.
So this reminds me of a conversation we had a few weeks ago on the pod. And later in the day, or maybe been two days later, I thought of, that's the reason why. So I had mentioned that at least back when Iowa had chances to win an outright regular season conference title, the Big Ten, the women, I was like, I said that meant more than a tournament title. But you and Curtis disagreed, but you went to UNI and Curtis went to Ohio, to like mid-majors where your bid goes with the conference tournament. So I chalked it off to, one of the high major, or what do they call them, Power 6 conferences, I think body of work going through that slog of a Big 10 or a Big East or a Big 12, to those fans, it means a little more than to get hot at the right time like I did a few years ago and then win a Big 10 tournament. Because Iowa's done that 3 times on the men's side in the last 20 years, but they haven't won an outright conference championship since 1980 or 79, one of those.
Wow.
And so, the Purdue's of the world who are just good teams, like they win it. Those are the ones that I think matter most to at least Power 6 fans.
Yeah.
But I could see why it's different for mid-major fans.
So you still think that a regular season title means more than a tournament title?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the conversation of what you mean by means more. I still think that in terms of your NCAA tournament resume, if you're going to pick one, I don't know. It seems like there's going to be more favor given to a team that wins the conference tournament, just because it's like, again, you're looking at the most recent body of work and you're seeing them do well in a 3-day setting, where it's like you've got to play back to back to back. But I don't know. I definitely can see your point where it's like, it's almost like winning a fantasy football regular season title, where it's like that always to me means way more than winning the tournament title, or like is harder to do because you've got to do well like for a full season. So it's like I can see where you're coming from, where it's like that does show your dominance or your impressive resume more than just a tournament title does. So
this one's different though for the Hawkeye women. Is this could be the third tournament in a row that they win, which is I think only 2 programs have done that before. Purdue and I believe Ohio State, or was it Maryland did it a couple years ago.
And Caitlyn will graduate with having won. Did she win one regular season Big Ten title?
Yeah, they won in a couple years ago. Yeah, as a sophomore.
Yeah, so I don't know. Kind of an interesting, like, whatever little oddity on her resume is for as well as she's done in so many areas, that she was only able to win one regular season Big Ten title. Nothing against her, just kind of a weird little thing that comes along with it.
So moving on, there's one interesting impact or factor in this year's tournament that changed, and Lisa kind of talked about it. The schedule kind of changed, so I'll just let her kind of explain what's going on there.
Very excited to have the double bye, and that we'll be playing the winner of Wisconsin versus Penn State on Friday night. This tournament concerns me a little bit just because how consolidated it is. For example, our game's at 5:30 on Friday, and if we would win, that game's at like 3:30 on Saturday. If we would win, that game's at 11 o'clock on Sunday. But that's 10 o'clock because of daylight savings time. We've played some early games, but never a 10 o'clock game. So that's going to be interesting. Both teams obviously will be in the same boat, but we just hope to make it there. I am concerned just for all the players' safety about it being so consolidated with the times of this tournament.
Wow. I hadn't even thought about that. So they potentially could play 3 games over a span of like 36 hours just about?
And on the YouTube, I was like, well, I didn't know that they moved it up because she didn't mention it. So I looked it up, the last 2 ones that they won. And last year they were a 2 seed. I forget what they were the year before in 2022.
They would have been the 1 seed because they won.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So here's what time they played, at least according to Wikipedia when I looked it up. The championship game's on Sunday, and this is the biggest one. The other days are like a couple hours off. They were at 4 yesterday. That's what or last year.
Last year, yeah.
And 3 on the year before. So I don't know why they moved it up to 11.
That's really bizarre. It has to be a television scheduling thing. I don't know if there's something going because it's on championship is on CBS.
It's on CBS, and
that's Iowa's News Now. Our viewers can tune in on Sunday at 11 a.m.
If that changed recently and it wasn't on CBS last year, which I think it was, the MVC tournament is right after it. So I don't know if...
So you can tune in and watch you and I after... Yeah. It seems like the Big Ten would say, like, bump that MVC up to the 11 o'clock start time, and we're going to go ahead and take the premier start time. I don't know. That's very curious. I thought when I saw 11, I'm like, I thought it was later last year, but that's very curious. I hadn't even thought about it being daylight saving time, too, which, I mean, listen, I'm not going to correct Lisa Bluter in the middle of a presser, but the correct term is daylight saving, not daylight savings time, just so I can, any viewers can impress and
that is true.
Annoy their friends with any verbal usage. But what day is that? Saturday into Sunday? So it's going to feel like 10 a.m. for them. Is that?
Yeah, that's
right?
what she said. Yep.
Wow, that's wild.
It is, but like she mentioned, it's for both teams. So I don't.
Doesn't the
So the Buckeyes would potentially play at 11 on Sunday.
And if Iowa had gotten the 3 seed, they'd be playing later on Friday, right?
So it'd be even worse if Indiana won.
For Indiana.
Because they'd play 8, then 3, and then I guess it's the same from Saturday to Sunday. But
yeah, that's tough.
It will be interesting to see if anyone's legs give out on Sunday. They are kids, though. I mean, they're college kids, so I mean, how much I mean, it would hurt me as a 34-year-old to play that many games. But I also played a few soccer games like on the same day before, just a few years ago. So I mean, it's doable.
Oh, to be young and athletic,
Exactly.
as John Anderson on SportsCenter says. This is a similar format, I should say. I'd be curious to look back at the schedule of the, what did they call it, the Gulf Coast Showcase that they played in late November.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a 3 games in 3 days?
I'll look it up on the schedule.
Because that was one where they, I mean, again, had to play Kansas State in the championship game.
Just a few weeks after playing, which would be
Yeah.
a similar situation with Ohio State if they make it in Indiana for that.
Not even a few weeks. I feel like it was like a week and a half later, wasn't it? I mean, they played Kansas State initially on November 16th, and then again it was 10 days later. So those games, were the 24th, 25th, and 26th that Iowa played. So that's, if anything else, that's a good warm-up or a good metric to look at how well you play in a 3-day showcase. So those teams are not, of course, maybe as talented as the Big Ten is. Florida Coast is a good team, so that's a good win for them on that second day. And then Kansas State, of course, a elite program right now. So
According to the box scores, though, all of them started at 7:30, so that's a little different.
Really?
There were no time differences there.
Interesting. The point I was going to make a few minutes ago was that I'm curious when we get up there to cover this Big Ten tournament, how much it's going to feel like a home game for Iowa. I have to feel like, I mean, again, this is the first Big Ten sellout ever. Like, who do you think is buying these tickets? It's not Indiana, Ohio State fans, all due respect to those programs and their fan bases. We've got a lot of Caitlyn Clark fans in the building wanting to see her final Big Ten tournament. So I have a good feeling that this is going to feel a lot like a home-ish game for them. It's Minneapolis is already Carver North. This is going to feel, I think, even
Oh, you shouldn't say that, actually. Iowa State fans think that they coined that phrase like Hilton South. I posted on her comment about it being Carver North, Lisa Bluter, and some Iowa State fans said, "Oh, you're trying to be just like us," since they call the Sprint Center Hilton South, which I'm pretty sure we called the Metrodome Kinnick North. So I mean, you're not original.
I feel like
it's not even original take. Like in general, like no one's trying to claim it.
I don't even. I was going to say I don't even think that Iowa fans would say we made up this term.
No,
That's just
I don't think so.
a college sports term that they use. Oh, give me a break, Iowa State fans. The one big factor that we're not the one, but at least one of the major factors we're going to be looking at as they go into the Big Ten tournament and the rest of the postseason is Molly Davis, how she recovers, and what the look ahead is going to be like for her. I mean, I think that all of us, when we saw that injury on, I don't know what day it is right now. When we saw that injury on Sunday. We all feared the worst for her, that we'd seen the last of her in a Hawkeye uniform. But, I mean, just incredible news that she's going to at least try to make it back for the postseason. Doesn't sound like any promises, and we're not going to see her at the Big Ten tournament. Is that right?
Yeah, Bluter said yesterday she's out for this weekend.
So I would say, I would think that Iowa's probably not going to take their chances, and we might not see her till the Sweet 16. If she's healthy, I don't think that they'd risk her for the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament either. So let's hear from Lisa Bluter. She talks about Molly Davis' status as the team moves ahead now into the postseason.
Well, I'm not sure how much I can get into it, but basically it's not a torn ACL, and it will not require surgery. I just have to be careful because of medically things you're not supposed to talk too much about, so I'll just have to say it was a knee injury, but it wasn't ligament damage. We'll say that. It's not going to require surgery, but she will not be able to play this week.
Yeah, Molly's a very crucial part of this team, and me and Kylie stepping in and filling those minutes are going to be super important, and we know that our teammates and coaches are behind us, and we have all the confidence in the world in each other and our team, so we're ready to go.
I think me and Zach can both kind of say the same thing on this. Whenever there's a position or a role that needs to be, someone has to step up in it, we're more than willing to do so. So no matter what position that is or role that is, we'll do whatever we have to.
Mike, I know you're a Molly Davis super fan. How do you feel like this impacts our chances in the Big Ten tournament or the NCAAs if Molly can't come back and play for this team?
You know, it's a big hit. She does a lot of small things. I mean, I think she averages 5 or 6 points a game, but she's a starter and she does those gritty plays, and she's there on the court. You don't see a scoring drought, but sometimes when they do go through that, she can just take it to the hoop, even though she's, so short compared to all the other girls. I think it will have an impact. But the one thing that I like, though, is that Kylie Feuerbach has just been playing out of her mind lately. I feel like the last 3 games she's hit a couple of. I mean, Minnesota and Illinois, she hit 3 threes each at least in those games, and then she hit one against Ohio State, I believe. But she had like 4 steals in a 3-minute stretch, and I was sitting there, and I'm like, what the heck, you know? She's been playing pretty well lately, and if she can do that, I think this team will be fine. We'll miss Molly, but I also think, because Lisa said that Sidney Affolter would step into that starting lineup for the Big Ten tournament, I feel like that's a positive too, because she is the same way. I think that's why they brought those 2 ladies out yesterday. She just does all the grit plays too, and it seems like they don't really care what happens as long as they get the W. So I really like the way Sid's grown this year, and I think she's an awesome player, so I don't see much of a drop-off, but, you know, it will be sad to see her not on the court.
Yeah, it's true. That's if you look at any benefits of anything that's happened through the rest of the regular season, this is maybe the one benefit of Molly Davis being ill for so long. I mean, she had a stretch of 3, 4, 5 games where she started but only played a few minutes because she was so under the weather that she just couldn't manage a whole quarter even. And so I feel like we got a chance to see this team without Molly Davis and how they look without Molly Davis, which definitely is impactful. I mean, that was the Nebraska game, for example, was one of the games that Molly missed on the road. And so we've had a chance to see this team without her, and they definitely have a harder time of things. But as this team's grown, it's not like an automatic L without Molly Davis out there. Life's going to be a little bit more challenging, but we know this team can still beat some of the best in the country. I mean, they beat Ohio State largely without Molly Davis. She got injured, early in the second quarter, midway through the second quarter? So they still had to finish that game without her and did perfectly fine.
You were shooting, so I was able to. I don't know if you saw how she got injured or saw a replay.
Yeah.
She was going to steal an inbounds pass, and, like, she planted, and she collided with the Ohio State girl. I don't know how much that happened, but, I mean, she was going in for a steal. And then it looked to me like she blew out her knee, so it's positive that's not. And I think the one important factor of her going to try and play in the next few weeks is Bluter said, you know, players at her size have a harder time finding work in Europe. So I don't know what kind of future she has playing basketball. I think Bluter was unknown if she's going to try. But just at her size and her position, you know, usually like taller girls like Megan Gustafson, I was understanding, and if I was understanding her correctly, have an easier time just, you know, because they're post players and whatnot. But I think that's why she's going to try and get back so quick, because this might be her last go around. But while we're on the topic of Kylie stepping in, I was listening to the soundbite or the press conference from yesterday, and I did catch a interesting soundbite that I thought was kind of fun, and I wanted to play it. It's from her about how wild she looked on defense on Sunday.
You've always been the kind of person who, kind of defender that just sort of flies around and gets her hands on
That's what I do. Just wander. Yeah, you could say that. I kind of I have a nickname that my AAU coach, he called me Roy Twirly, because even on the offensive end, I kind of I'm all over the place and you never really know what I'm doing. But yeah, so I just always try to do whatever I have to, but I'm wandering around a lot. But
Oh, man. You do have to be encouraged if you're an Iowa fan based on what you saw out of this team on Sunday without Molly in the lineup, what you saw out of Kylie Feuerbach. I mean, she had 4 points and 4 steals, I think was her box score. And
4 steals, I mean, they all came in the same time, too. It was kind of like a nuts little stretch of play.
She just adds a little bit of a wild card that teams maybe don't know what to prepare for with her, because I think she's a very talented player that's come to this team and hasn't had a chance to get the minutes that maybe she would have at a lot of other programs just based on the talent that's already here at Iowa. But we're going to see a lot of her next year, and so I think this is a good little warm-up for
4 points, 4 steals was her stat line. You know, an interesting storyline moving into the tournament is, was it Mitch, when you guys went down to Dallas, you did an interview with her because she was hurt all last year, she's going to play. And, like, what's it like going to the Final Four but not being able to play? So I think we might have to do another story with her, just like, hey, now you're a year later, your tournament run. Because I remember a lot of Hawkeye fans feeling bad about her. I think did she blow out her knee like the year before? Was that what it was, or something like that?
I forget what her injury was, but yeah, it might have been an ACL or something. I'm not sure. So yeah, it's at least good news. We might see Molly Davis back on the court. Interesting, somebody had replied to my video about it and said that there's been studies out there about how women are more prone to ACL injuries because the way that they use their the muscles in their legs, they use that part of their leg more frequently or more seriously, and so sometimes women are more prone to ACL injuries than men are, which I'd never heard that before. I'd never even taken notice of that, but apparently there's some medical data out there about that. But hoping to see Molly back in here. Let's move on to the Big Ten honors that we had this year. Yesterday, of course, Caitlyn Clark, to the surprise of nobody, was named the Big Ten's Player of the Year. I have to think unanimously. I mean, I don't know who else would even get a vote for.
It was unanimous, yeah. Per their graphic.
It's like she's just so far and away above anybody else in the Big Ten this year that it had to be unanimous. So she was the only first-team all-conference honoree, to the maybe surprise and consternation of some Hawkeye fans that Kate Martin and Hannah Stolke didn't land on the first team. I'm a little. Everybody loves Hannah. I don't know if I saw her as a first-team honoree this year. I think the second team is about where she deserved to be this season.
Yeah.
Kate, I don't know. As far as they put 10 players on the first team, I have to. Kate's up for a national where she's one of 40 candidates for a National Player of the Year. So she's one of the 40 best national players, but not one of the 10 best Big Ten players. That surprised me a little bit. Her stats maybe don't show it entirely, but I feel like she's played so well in Big Ten conference play that it seems like most coaches would acknowledge how much of a factor she is for this team. I mean, she really has been an outstanding and such a crucial part of this program that I thought that she maybe would deserve first-team Big Ten status, but such is life.
Oh, well, she's on the sportsmanship honoree, so for the Big Ten. I'm going through to see who it is. I don't watch enough Big Ten basketball to kind of know. I mean, I watch Iowa games and see highlights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of these names are the ones that you'd assume to be on there, like Mackenzie Holmes, J.C. Sheldon, Sarah Williams, Cody McMahon, Alexis Markowski, Sarah Scalia, Liela, Michigan's player, I can't say her last name. And yeah, all these players. But I do think Kate is in the conversation. I wonder if she was the 11th player on the list,
Very well could be. She's not one of the 5 best players in the conference, certainly. I guess I would think that she's one of the 10 best players in the conference. But, oh, well, yeah, what can you do? I mean, that's the role that she's kind of taken on this team, is that she knows that she's not going to have all the numbers and get all the attention that maybe she would on a lot of programs. Maybe the biggest snub was Sidney Affolter not getting 6th Player of the Year. I think that's what everybody's like, how in the heck do you not give Sidney Affolter 6th Player of the Year? I know I didn't do a deep dive or anything again on this, but I know that David Eicholt went through a lot of the numbers, and it's like the numbers back up that she's, I mean, at least as far as the person who won 6th Player of the Year, do you know how to say this person's name? Is it Taryn?
Taryn Halleck, yeah.
Taryn Halleck. That Sidney Affolter's got better numbers than her, and it would seem that the eye test would say that Sidney Affolter's better than her. So, I don't know, bit of a snub. And
Sid also said yes. She gave the cliche response like, "Oh yeah, I don't really care that much." Not looking forward to that, but you could see. I had Kylie in the frame, and she's like, after it, she said get snubbed. She's like, yeah, she did get snubbed.
Yeah. So I don't know. Who knows if that's going to create a chip on Sid's shoulder as she goes into the Big Ten tournament as a starter now. I think that's confirmed that Sid's going to be starting.
That's what Lisa said. I mean, obviously she can always go back on that, but one of the reporters asked, "Hey, does that mean Sid moves up to the starting lineup?" And she said yes. So we'll see, but that's what it looks like at this point.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see her as a starter because she makes such a big impact when she comes off the bench. I'd love to see that impact for maybe 30 minutes of a game, see what she can do out there for a lot of regular minutes. Same with, I'm excited to see what Kylie Feuerbach offers when she's playing more minutes. I'm excited to see what Taylor McCabe offers. I mean, she's known to be a sniper from 3-point range, and so can she come in and, just like she did at Minnesota when she made, 5 3-pointers at Minnesota? Can she provide that off the bench where she's going to be getting more regular minutes now for the next 3 games? What's Taylor McCabe going to do with this opportunity? It's a good test for this team as they prepare for next year when they're going to be without Kate, Caitlyn, Gabbie, and Molly, who's going to be stepping up. And so this tournament is going to be a good test for that, where we're going to get a chance to see what does Taylor and Sidney and Kylie Affolter to this lineup, and what are they going to bring to this team next year? Before we wrap up the conversation about the women's team, we should say that just in the last couple hours, Caitlyn Clark got her first national honor, the
Athletic.
Scott Docterman carrying the torch for Caitlyn Clark as she was named the Athletics National Player of the Year for the second straight season. It's almost not – it's a weird point where it's like almost not even newsworthy when Caitlyn is the National Player of the Year, because it's like it's just assumed. Like, she's going to win every National Player of the Year award, and we all know it. Like, there's nobody in the country that's even close to her numbers and talent level right now. Like, there's a lot of players that are having great years, but nobody has put up anywhere close to the same numbers that Caitlyn has. Juju Watkins is second in scoring this year with like 27 a game. Outstanding player, and she's, I think, going to break Caitlyn's scoring record in a few seasons. But again, she's not going to touch Caitlyn in terms of National Player of the Year conversation in any publication.
Not this year, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, not this year, yeah.
Well, obviously, she can't next year because Caitlyn will be gone, but.
yeah, she could be National Player of the Year next year. I mean, she could be a 3-time Naismith winner. I don't know. Juju Watkins, boy, that girl's going to be fun to watch. In Iowa City, going to be coming to the Big Ten next season. The Iowa men still playing meaningful basketball as we approach the final regular season game of the year.
Who would have thought?
It's like they are. I don't know if you remember a lot of Iowa teams like this, where it's just like you're just one game away from writing them off and saying like, all right, their season's over, not an NCAA.
I think a lot of people did write them off, and I was included in that. After that, might have been the second loss to Maryland or the loss at Penn State. I'm like, these teams. And Iowa wasn't that good at that point of the season either.
Yeah.
But they're not, those teams were not, like, they got swept by Maryland, which is, if you have those two wins, they're not big wins, but they're not losses. I think that changes, and I think they're, like, going to make the tournament, just on a loss standpoint. But, like, those two, the one against, now I'm blanking. I don't have their schedule pulled up.
It was to Penn State or something, too.
At Penn State was big, although that was a road game. I think they ended up losing by 8 or 10. Huge games that Michigan. I went to that game. It wasn't close in December.
Oh, that's right.
Michigan's not a good team. They have like 8 wins on the year, and they didn't blow us out, but they handled the game the entire way through. The interior defense was the worst I've ever seen, at least this season. It just wasn't a great game, and Michigan's not a good team. So those 3-4 wins, like if you switch that, I mean, you're talking about in the tournament right now,
Yeah, it's like every time they would lose a game, I'm like, okay, well, if they still win this, and this game, then they're still in there. And they keep just hanging on for dear life. And that Northwestern win was huge for them, beating Penn State at home when that was basically their season riding on it. If they lost that game, they were definitely going to be out of the tournament. And so just getting these wins when they need them the most is going to be big. And so we have the Iowa women playing possibly, hopefully, at 11 a.m. on Sunday. And then we'd have the men playing at 6 o'clock that night, playing for their tournament life. Again, if they lose to Illinois, it's going to be real tough for them to get in the NCAA tournament. So this is a win that maybe everything is riding on, depending on what happens in the Big Ten tournament next week.
It's one of those. I was talking with Kaysen, who's our meteorologist here, one of them, and he's a big Illinois fan. And I was saying, it depends on the Big Ten tournament too, because if you end up playing Illinois somewhere, I don't know how the tournament bracket's gonna fall out. Iowa could go up to I think it's potentially that they could go up to a 4 seed, but that would be with a win. I think the double bye is still in play, just because that log of teams in there is they have similar records. I don't think it's likely. I think you need a lot of things to happen.
They're number 6 in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think they could drop to 7 or 8 too. I'm not 100% on that, but if they end up playing Illinois, Illinois on a neutral is better than Illinois at home, at least quad wise.
Yeah.
So I think even if you drop that game, depending on who you play in the Big Ten tournament and how far you make it, you could still get some quality wins.
Yeah, Nebraska's 4th in the Big Ten. They're 11-8, and Michigan State is 8th with a 9-9 record. And so, win or lose, Iowa could go anywhere from 4th to 8th. Illinois coming off a loss to Purdue yesterday. I only know again because Kaysen was sad. So
they were in control early too. I was watching I was watching Wake Forest because that's a bubble game. Wake Forest lost by double digits at home. Huge result for Iowa because they're on the bubble. They beat Duke a few weeks ago, and I think Wake is kind of their door is closing on an at-large bid. So Bracketology, Wake is a last 4 in team. Iowa's on the first 4 out.
Okay.
According to Joey Brackets, Joe Lenardi.
Yeah.
So that game was huge. Seton Hall's last 4 in. Iowa beat Seton Hall earlier this year.
Yeah, that's true.
St. John's, Utah, Providence. You want to see them lose. I don't think their schedules are favorable though for a loss. But yeah.
Here's my projection for what Iowa needs to do to get into the tournament. If they beat Illinois on Sunday and they win one game at the Big Ten tournament, I think they get in. Thoughts? Do they need to do more than that in the Big Ten tournament?
They might need to win 2, only because if they're a 6 or a 7 seed, that one win is going to be against a 14 to 10 seed, which doesn't do much for your resume.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than not and than losing that game. But then if you play like a Nebraska or a Michigan State on that Friday game, that'd be a quad 1 win, I believe, depending on who it is. And it's doable. Like, you could beat Nebraska or Michigan State. You already beat Michigan State this year.
Yeah.
And Nebraska, I believe. So, like, it's doable. It's just, who do you play? It all depends on that.
Do you think, let's say Iowa loses to Illinois on Sunday, is that it for them?
I don't think so. I think, again, you can get 2 quad 1 wins in that's just going to the Big Ten title game.
Yeah.
That's
what they'd have
tournament.
to do,
I mean, you'd have to get at least 1. But there's quality. Like I was saying to Kaysen yesterday, if you lose Illinois, that's a quad 1 loss. But if you play them again or you play Michigan State and beat them, that's on a neutral. That's a quad 1 win. So if you flip-flop those, like say they beat Illinois and lose in the second round of the Big Ten tournament, the quarterfinals, it's the same exact scenario. It's just closer to Selection Sunday. It also depends on these other bubble teams, how they perform down the stretch.
Yeah. Meaningful basketball playing in March. There's not much more that you could possibly want out of your team, and that's what Iowa's doing right now. They have played themselves into a tricky situation through a lot of really head-scratching losses this year, but they keep beating enough quality opponents that they are still playing meaningful basketball. So what more could you possibly want out of an Iowa basketball team?
Before we wrap on this show, I was looking at, are you familiar with BartTorvik.com?
What is it?
Bart Torvik. It's like Ken Pom, but he tweaks it a little bit. It's based, most of it, the offense and defense is on adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency. The cool thing about this, and it's free, and you don't need a subscription to Ken Pom, but that's a great resource too. The rankings are similar, but you can like tailor the rankings to a specific time of period. So like overall in the full season, they're ranked 45th.
Just like as a team.
Yeah, in the rankings like Ken Pom, or you look up what the ranking is in Ken Pom. And on Torvik, they're 45th overall in the full season. On offense, they're 11th, and the defense they're 160th. But if you do it since February, that jumps to 35, right? And 10th in offense, but their defense is much worse.
Wow.
And then let me pull up one. Got another graphic. Since February 17th, now this is cherry picking because it's the day before they beat Wisconsin. They are 20th in that ranking and 7th in offensive efficiency, and defense jumps up to 134. So it just kind of gives you an idea how well this team's playing. Mind you, too, like I'm cherry picking the dates, but that's against the toughest stretch of Iowa's schedule, right? We're playing all these quad 1, quad 2 games. So it really shows how much better they've done in this part of the season.
Mike, you allegedly no ball. How is this team so bad on defense? What is it that makes them so terrible on defense for their 222nd since February 1st?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the style of ball that Fran plays and the players he attracts. Obviously, he wants to play like a fast-paced, offensive-minded game. And, without being like, I haven't played basketball, and I did in like middle school, but I didn't in high school or college. So I don't know the ins and the outs like some other guys do. But it just seems that his philosophy is let's just score more points. And when we're bringing in players that are tall, lanky, can do a lot of things, one of those that I've noticed is there aren't a lot of very good defenders that in the Fran era. Now this team, I think Josh is a good defender relatively, and Tony can at some point. But those perimeter defenders is what seems to be like what Iowa misses.
Does Bart Torvik Sounds like a Saturday Night Live character that Will Ferrell would make up. I'm Bart Torvik. Does that do women's stats too?
Does not.
Oh, okay.
I was looking for that.
Yeah.
For a women's equivalent. I haven't found one, so if you do, let us know.
I was just curious about where they would rank. I mean, they've got to be close to number 1 offense in the country, right? I have to assume. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not sure
score
about
100
that.
Points is pretty outstanding, but I'd mainly be curious to see where they stand defensively. Do we want to have Owen click through ESPN.com to see if we can? Let's see if we can.
That'd be an interesting discussion.
So
but
they are number 1 in the nation in points per game. The I women are 92.7. Number 2 is LSU at 87.9, so about 5 points ahead of number 2. Then South Carolina's right behind them. The next closest team in the Big Ten, Michigan State, 84.5.
Now those points per game, obviously, it's a little different than this, and I can't explain it because I'm not a stats guru. But adjusted offensive efficiency is a little different because you can score like 20 points on a second string team and make a game look more comfortable than it was, or you can hit a few threes towards the end, or you can go cold when your second stringers are on. Mm-hmm. So I believe these adjusted efficiency rankings kind of level that out, and they have like an algorithm where they can give you a better idea where they rank.
Yeah,
which is what I like to look at.
I'm just kind of going down and trying to see where I can find them on points allowed per game. I'm through 150 teams, I think, and haven't found Iowa yet. I don't know how many points they give up per contest, if that is quick to Google. Again, so I'm now at about a couple hundred teams in at 67 points per game. Still haven't found the Hawkeyes. There's Iowa State at 68.1.
So below 68 on the women's side. That's,
no, sorry, 68 points per game.
Oh, 68 points
They're
per game.
below, I mean, again, just in terms of points given up per game, they're below, here we go, 71.8 points per game they gave up. And that's, and below probably 200 other teams.
So not ideal. And,
Actually, yes, there's maybe a few dozen teams below them in terms of points per game, but not a lot lower than. They're in the bottom 50, I guess I'll say, just eyeballing this right now.
Well, yeah, and then you got to take into consideration some of the blowouts where it's like a 30, 25-point win, which there was a lot.
They're not clamping down on defense in the
No.
fourth quarter for a lot of these games. And
they've scored like 101 into like 77, which is a blowout, but they still scored 77, which is above that average,
Yeah, and I don't think Lisa Bluter's going to say that like this team, their specialty is not defense. They know that they're a team that racks up a lot of points, and so that's going to permit a lot of points to be scored too. So doesn't necessarily take away from what they do. Even though they're giving up 71 points a game, they're probably capable of giving up closer to 60 points a game or something.
Yeah.
If they really do clamp it down for 4 quarters.
And all these stats show on the men's side too is just how the difference in play. I searched December. I didn't put this in here. The month of December, these rankings were like in the tank. They were like 160th overall in just the month of December. And that's when they played Purdue and Iowa State. So those are 2 huge Final Four level. I'll say it. I'm a Hawkeye fan, but I think Iowa State can make the Final Four.
They're good.
They're good on defense. They're one of the top teams in the nation. Those are just bad matchups too. Those 2 games specifically with Edie and the defense that they play on the perimeter at Iowa State. So it just gives you kind of an idea of how well they're playing lately, especially against the toughest part of their schedule too.
Yeah. I'm excited to run an Eye on the Hawks podcast next week sometime where we can talk a little bit more concretely about what the Hawkeyes postseason projection looks like as they head into the Big Ten tournament. Before we do get wrapped up, I want to applaud Iowa fans. I don't know if, Mike, when you were watching the game on Sunday against Ohio State, I've said that, like, I cannot think of many atmospheres that were louder than that from start to finish for one game. I think I said that that Cooper DeJean touchdown at Kinnick this last year when he had the punt return touchdown, that was like one of the loudest things that I've ever heard, and I think that was backed up by a lot of other people.
Michigan State or Minnesota?
What's that?
Michigan State or Minnesota? Because Minnesota was really loud.
Was very loud for about 45 seconds. Both would qualify in there. But I mean, it's like every shot was like that decibel level at Carver on Sunday. It's like when Gabbie hit that 4-point play where she hit the 3 and got fouled, like that place just went bonkers. And it's like every single basket that was made, just the crowd just goes crazy. I mean, that was one of the wildest in-game experiences I've ever been a part of. I was watching the replay on TV just because I like seeing Gus Johnson's calls, and it's like you couldn't hear Gus after a lot of the makes because that place just was so freaking loud after every single basket that Iowa made.
Yeah, it definitely came across on TV very well, and hopefully Hawkeye fans feel Carver like that on Sunday because they will definitely need that help.
And what I do hope, I know Iowa had some top-tier national recruits in the building on Sunday. I hope that they took notice too, because that was one hell of an atmosphere to be a part of if you're a recruit that's thinking about where you're going to go. That's a pretty attractive atmosphere that you might want to be a part of if you're a top-tier high school recruit.
Maddie Greenway, I mean, come on.
I like her chances coming to the Hawkeyes. Maddie Greenway, let's bring her down here.
Come on, Chad.
Yeah.
Bring her here. Bring her home.
Come on. What are you even thinking? There's no decision here. So you can follow all of us as we head north here later this week. Mike and I are going to be traveling up to the Twin Cities to cover the Hawkeyes. I assume we have some social plugs coming up here. You can follow Eye on the Hawks on X, on YouTube, on Instagram. Of course, if you're following on YouTube, you can see the video chat that we're going to have throughout the week. There's some possible discussions of bringing in some extra guests for the podcast as we go up and cover the Big Ten tournament. It's going to be a little bit on the fly, a little bit rough and dirty, and a little bit, I don't want to say unorganized, but we're just going to be having conversations a little bit like we did today. Not much of a full actual rundown, but just kind of discussing what we saw out of the Hawkeyes in that particular game. But the plan is to do one podcast each day as they travel up there in the Big Ten tournament. So again, X, YouTube, Instagram, you can follow Iowa's News Now and Eye on the Hawks. We'll be tweeting all along the way, and you can see what we have as the Hawkeyes try to win would this be the third straight Big Ten tournament they win?
Yep, third straight.
As they try to win that third straight Big Ten tournament and lock up a 1 seed at the NCAA. So thanks for joining us on Eye on the Hawks, and we will see you in just a few days.